Mhm.
Guys, just to know, sorry guys, we're going live now, okay?
Thank you very
Okay.
much.
Sorry, my computer crashed in the middle of the hosting process. I don't know what happened, but
No
anyway,
problem.
I'm gonna shut up now. Sorry guys.
No problem. Computers crash all the time. I'm actually quite amazed that mine has made it through the whole time. For some reason, it's extremely shock sensitive of late.
Hmm. Okay, let's see. I want to make sure we're actually before I pretty much like disappear. It says an error occurred.
Well, if you gotta work, you got no
Oh,
choice.
there we go. Yes, I do have no choice because I would like to make money. I have student loans to pay off.
Don't we all have something to pay off?
Student loans are the devil.
Yeah, they just accumulate interest and they keep on fucking with you.
They do. That's one of the things. So yeah, we don't know where Oliver is, Geronimo. Oliver disappeared on us. He's somewhere being black right now. That's racist.
He's
Stop
checking his
oppressing.
privilege.
He's checking his black privilege.
Good lord.
Yeah.
Shouldn't King of Pole be on stream right now? He seems a little bit offline.
This chat, I can't find it here.
Are we even sure we have another stream in us? Because we talked for
We're
like
live!
already.
I don't know. I don't. Like, I'm just about to take this. Oh, having a problem. Oliver is working on it. Oliver has a problem.
Oh, Oliver's hosting?
No, Oliver has a problem.
Ah. Let me continue listening to my tracks. Hey, search for a video. Post some tracks on here.
Do something.
Let's get some groove in this bitch.
Oh, now it's up to 25. Huh.
Oh, I wanna try this draw app. It's a little pencil with a mustache. It looks like fun.
Christ, Google does something right and no one knows about it.
Something out there, except for, spying on all of us. Yes, he's checking his black privilege. Since we've only have 27 here, I'm now going to answer Harry's question earlier to me, for those who don't know it, and I did answer it off the stream, which was my thoughts on Anita Sarkeesian, by the way, KNGW, person who wrote all the pieces, that narrative most of y'all probably read in the defense of Christina Summers. So with that said, here is how you work with Anita Sarkeesian. Rule number 1. Anita Sarkeesian does not know what she's talking about. How you know this is that Anita Sarkeesian, even though she is a very smart, very shrewd businesswoman, and I mean that in the most beautiful of sense, Anita Sarkeesian presents little bits and pieces of theories she does not fully understand. So, for example, she will talk about subject-object dichotomy, but that's a philosophical argument basically saying that I am the subject, someone else is the object, and if that object moves in space, it's an object in space. Whenever that object disappears from my view as a subject, does that object still exist?
So what's like the... Sorry. That reminds me of the teapot.
There's a teapot. I don't see a teapot, sorry.
The flying teapot. This idea, if there's a teapot flying in the atmosphere, we couldn't find it.
Yeah. So if it's not there in space, then how do you know it's there? If you're not there to perceive it, how do you know it's there? So, what Anita
does... the uncertainty principle.
Yep, in a way. Then basically what happens is Anita takes feminist thought, which is feminist thought at its very boiled down core, is essentially that women are oppressed and men are the ones oppressing them. Men have power, women are without power. Therefore, men must exert that power, and women are exerted upon. That should sound like her thought about subject-object dichotomy, which is that men are the subject, women are the object. Men are the doers, women exist. So, what you have is that Anita is taking a concept that exists in philosophical argumentation, putting a feminist spin on it, and then saying this is the way that is. But here is the problem. All of this necessitates, you must have this for this to be true, that all men must want to oppress all women, because men are part of what is called the patriarchy. If they are part of the patriarchy, they are part of a vast conspiracy to make women much less powerful and keep men in power. If you have one man who does not want to oppress a woman, the patriarchy cannot exist, because the patriarchy is deduced, or it's not deduced, it's induced with inductive logic. This man is oppressive, this man is oppressive, this man is oppressive, therefore men are oppressive. If you have one man who is not oppressive, what ends up happening is that inductive logic starts to fall apart. Is it disproven? No. It can still exist, because most men can be. But then what you have is the destruction of all men are. If all men are not oppressive of all women, the patriarchy doesn't exist. Just some men are oppressive of some women. And if that's the case, what you got? You really don't have anything. You have some jerks who are being jerks to women. Well, you also have some jerks that are jerks to gay people. Some jerks that are jerks to males. If that is the case, then the patriarchy as an institutional problem starts to fade away. Most of what people identify as patriarchy is actually done on the individual level interpersonally, calling people a bitch, a cunt, a slut, a whore, etc. What we end up doing is those men become all men. And inductively, this man called me a bitch, this man called me a bitch, this man called me a bitch. All of these men are taking away my power. Therefore, men are oppressive. All you need is one man. And then that starts to fall apart. So, to deal with anyone who says you're part of the patriarchy or you're a misogynist, all you need is one man who's not, or one woman who agrees with the man. Therefore, Anita Sarkeesian doesn't know what she's talking about, because she thinks all men oppress all women.
Yep.
If I was gay, I'd kiss you.
This is what happens when you actually research feminism. I actually know all of the waves, including, by the way, proto-feminism, which is actually the first wave of feminism, which was dealing with educational and ethnography. Those two things are the first wave of feminism in England. Unfortunately, because we're American and we just have to own everything, we throw out those first waves and we say, the first wave was actually suffragettes. Not true. The first wave was actually ethnography and education, which was in England and France. So most of us, when you're talking about misogyny, you're not talking about institutional. You're actually talking about interpersonal. And what becomes hard for misogyny as an institution to exist when you can only prove it on an individual level. Oh,
Yeah,
I'm a lot of scholars.
That's exactly what Gamergate comes down to, isn't it? Mm-hmm. She claims that it's all people, and we are proof that it's not. But we are not being heard.
Yeah, and that's one of the things, is that what they're doing is appealing to emotion. You're a misogynist. You're hurting me. Stop it. That's an appeal to emotion, because most of us, we don't want to hurt people. It is in our human nature, our fundamental human nature, to help each other. Believe it or not, people like to say, oh no, I hate people. It is in our nature to help each other evolutionarily, because if we don't, we die. We must help each other. That's why altruism exists. Even if you want to make the biological imperative argument that we must reproduce, we end up having altruism, which does exist because, have you ever seen someone run in front of a car to save a child that's not theirs?
Yeah, the human instinct is protection, because we are a social species. We only survived because we formed groups.
Yeah, so that's what ends up happening whenever someone says, oh, you're misogynist. What is it? It's emotional manipulation. And it works. It's very good emotional manipulation. But usually if you say, I'm not going to be emotionally manipulated, I'm not a misogynist, and they go, yes, you are. You say, no, I know who I am. That will end it right then. That's how you deal it. And I've been telling people this. I write mediums, large mediums on this. Did you know that gamers actually are an oppressed class institutionally, structurally, and interpersonally?
Yeah, there was actually a kind of discussion going on in the escapist forums if gamers could, by a very, very far-stretched definition of the term, be an ethnic class.
I don't know if they could be well, that actually is an interesting argument, because there is a specific culture. I mean, it's defined as a misogynistic culture no matter what, but I could actually see that. I was thinking more along the lines of most gamers are minorities. Well, not most. I should say about 33 to 40% are going to be any minority not white. And if that is the case, and you're saying that gamers are misogynist 12-year-old white men, not your shield comes into effect, because you would expect anywhere from 3 to 5% to be gay, up to 33% to be black, Hispanic, Asian, or anything in between. I mean, lots of things.
That's just talking about the Western world.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the entire 95% of the Asian market is, by Western standards, minority.
Yeah, Dragon Matt does bring up it would be a cultural group, not an ethnic group, because ethnicity, well, one of the problems is that we in the Western world, we define ethnicity based upon skin color, whereas other areas do it, maybe the Japanese, for the most part, they do tree of origin. Hispanics, Latino, Latinas typically do sort of nationality location for their demographics. So I think I could pretty much see it, but I definitely think there's a cultural argument there, that gamers do have their own culture, and as a result of having their own culture, they may be, prone to ethnocentricity.
Quick test, am I live again?
Yes.
We hear you.
Oh, thank God. It was a mess. Anyway, please continue.
But you sound totally different. But yeah, there y'all go. That's actually what we talked about during the break when y'all weren't here.
Yeah, old Three Dog was having a bit of a problem. I could hear you guys, but my other microphone was being problematic. So I had to do a really funky workaround on this. It was annoying. Like, even, I mean, if you look at the stream, it had two of me on screen there for just a half a second. So I think now we're kind of getting to the. Someone said it's not 3 dog, it's 6 dogs.
There were 6, yes.
So do we want to get back to some of the other questions that they had in the previous stream? I think we only answered a few of them, but there's still a couple of really good ones. It's up to you guys.
Yeah, I don't have much longer, but I'd be willing and able now that I got the other question out.
Fantastic. Let me go ahead and pull this up here. It says, Oliver, why are people talking so much about women in the industry and talking about game developers when the people calling the shots on the AAA industry are people from sales, planning, and PR? First off, this question was really worded oddly, so I'm not 100% sure what the question is, but I'm gonna try and answer this best I can. Basically, it looks like the question being asked here is why are people focusing on the women in game industry discussion when it really is about businesses, really actually being the ultimate drive point. I guess the only way I can kind of answer that question is, oh boy, this is tricky. I think that people are focusing on the women in industry part because it's easy to disseminate the information. It's easy for people to just relate that basic level thing. Business as a whole is, as I've discovered more and more over the past few years, is that general business practices are a complete damn mystery to people. Like, just me showing up and talking about Gamergate alone, I said, this is how these different parts of the business practice work, and people are amazed. I'm like, I thought everyone knew this. So it's really easy for people to just go, well, here's what's wrong with the industry. It has to be that there's no women in the industry. And if we fix this one problem, then everything's going to be peachy keen. And it's not. Just me interacting with Gamergate in general, and they're like, well, we're mad. We're going to do something about it. But I kind of learned that a lot of people didn't actually know what to do to institute the change they were looking for. My consistent message has been, if you want this stuff to change, you need to hit them where it hurts, which is the wallet. There's a reason that we have the saying, money talks, and money makes the world go round. Like, it doesn't matter what political ideologies or whatever people have, almost everyone is universally motivated, as far as just functioning society, is motivated by money. Now, for some people, it's more valuable, and for others, it's less valuable, but at the end of the day, it's a factor for people. And if these sites in question or businesses are not doing what you want them to do, or you think they're putting off bad vibes or whatever, if you take your dollar and go home, that actually matters. Like, everyone's like, well, you're just one person, you don't matter. Okay, well, tell that to 20,000 people who are just one person and don't matter. That kind of stuff adds up. And, that's what I keep saying. I keep telling these guys, I keep telling the audience, hey, go email advertisers, say, I'm not going to buy your product if you're supporting and you're doing business with these people.
Miyamoto's going to be looking real confused when he can't count his money.
Right. That's what's going to come down to when they look at their bottom line, over the course of a month, and they say, holy crap, we just suddenly bled out a bunch of money. They're going to change.
Benjamin Franklin's lonely. Where's the other 100?
So, to kind of bring that around to the question that they were asking about, why is there focus on women in the industry? Let me tell you about the experiences that I've had working in here. Most of the people that I've worked with are women. Now, does that mean that that's indicative of the entire experience? Absolutely not. But here's what I can say. I attended E3 with my wife, and we saw so many women there. It was ridiculous. Like, it was ridiculous in comparison to the narrative that's been pushed. And when I said that there were women there, I don't mean cosplayers. I don't mean booth babes. We were talking to actual developers who were sitting there and just completely involved, and they were guiding us through product. I'm like, what do you do? Like, that's the big thing that we always asked every single female developer. Like, what do you actually do? What is your job in this company? Oh, I'm on the art team, or I'm on the programming team. I'm like, huh. So what it is that it's the women are there in industry. They're passionate, they're knowledgeable, they know how to do their jobs just fine. It's that they're not drawing attention to themselves. They've got their heads down and they're doing major work. These women know how to hustle and get it done. But they're just not they're not looking for attention, they're not seeking the attention. It's like saying that there are no women CEOs of companies. Of course there are women CEOs of companies, but you don't hear about every single one.
Yeah, I agree. I've been visiting international game events for 10 years, and it's like the narrative is just so completely unrealistic. And I think it's one thing for, and that's what kind of baffles me. It's one thing for people like uh, those whose name we shall not mention, to that don't know the industry to say that, but there's actually some you know f- uh, more extremists within the industry that claim the same. And I mean, if Anita says it, I can just shrug it off as she doesn't know any better. But if an actual developer who I know visits these events claims such things, then you just know they are purposely trying to deceive people.
But yeah,
Go ahead.
one thing I don't get is that they keep putting this whole, we need more female developers, and they keep putting it to the gamers. Like Oliver said, I think, what was the name? The founder of Sierra Studios, Roberta Williams, I think. Let's be honest, 99% of gamers didn't know about her. We're not aware of all the female developers because developers aren't public figures. They have an office job. They walk in, do their work, and go home. They're not stars. We don't see them. We don't interact with them. So I don't get how gamers should be at fault that there are not more female developers. If there are anyone at fault, it's their own colleagues, the other male developers, harassing them in their own work field. Gamers don't walk in the office of EA and start harassing female developers there.
Yeah, that'd be something.
I think one of the things that is sort of at the heart of this discussion, speaking from a not development, not news, but a sort of a sociological, anthropological point of view, because that's really why I'm here, is to give a different take. Statistically speaking, this argument is that someone within a field has to be representative of the population at large. In other words, you have to have half men, half women, so many black, so many Hispanic, Latino, Latina, Asian, etc., etc. Here's the problem. The population, or the sample or population, whichever one, go with your buzzword or term there, of developers in no way has to be representative of the general population, because the general population is not full of developers.
Yeah.
It just, you shouldn't, I mean, it's like not everyone in the population is a social worker. Not everyone in the population is black. So you can't demand that a field intrinsically reflect the population at large, because the population at large is not that field. In sort of an anecdotal experience that I had, I went to E3 in 2004 as press. And in that time, I sort of had Oliver's same experience. I saw really adept women who were developers. I also saw some women PR who were not. At a Capcom booth, we were asking questions, and this woman clearly did not know what was going on. So we were asking her questions about whatever game it was at the time, and she has this flip card of answers, and she hands it to me. She goes, "This is what you're really here for, isn't it?" And she started to walk away. I said, "No, ma'am, excuse me." I said, "I want to talk to you. I want you to tell me your ideas and what you think this game is." And she just goes, "Well, I don't have an idea." And then on the second one, anyone who's gone knows what I mean when I say Kencha Hall. Kencha Hall is not where the AAA are. Kencha Hall is where probably you're going to get some of your merchandising, and you're going to get your indies and your small people. I went down to Kencha Hall, and there was this booth babe, real nice woman. She was sort of playing this part of it's kind of a dominatrix-y kind of woman, and she goes, "Get on your knees." So, I looked at her, I said, "Not going to happen." And she goes, "What?" And I said, "I know it's your job, and I greatly appreciate that you're trying to do your job, but I'm not here to talk to you about getting on my knees and playing this part. I'm here to talk to you about this game." Oh, dear God, did her eyes just light up. She was so excited. She goes, "Well," and she just starts rambling off this thing, and she's a booth babe. She's not supposed to know about the game. She's supposed to look pretty. That's the expectation of her. but she knew all about this game. She knew who developed it, when it was developed, what it's supposed to be, how you control it. Then she started talking about all these other games, and she started asking me where I'm from. She had all this background of information. So, I mean, my experience at E3 is that you can't really assume, and this goes for gaming at large, you cannot really assume that the gaming population is going to reflect this population or that population. You have to engage gaming on an individual level so that you can understand people's experiences. And
I want to tell a similar story to that because I'm a very big convention guy. I went to a recent a local convention in New Jersey a few times. There are a lot of cosplayers there advertising certain products. There are a lot of cosplayers there. One of the best things you can do is just talk to them. Not about what they're wearing, but just talk to them about start a conversation. You'll see that there's so much more behind. There's so much more than what they seem. It's a great way to meet people, and I think that people seem to misunderstand that.
I definitely agree, and one of the things that I think, that this is that why people, especially the press, are talking about increasing diversity within development, especially on gender lines, is one, it distracts from their own problems, which quite frankly, they are representative of a population of developers. Developers have the exact same amount of diversity as press does almost. So in one way, they're distracting from their own problems. And then the other thing is that it allows them to say, hey, we're here championing diversity, but don't look over here. We're just going to sweep this under the rug, and that's okay. I think that once you call out the diversity in the press and the failure of the diversity in the press to actually assist freelancers who by and large are going to be minority. They are not going to be white men because white men are getting hired full time. I think that by talking about only this over here, they have managed to say, oh, well, you don't have to look at our problems over here. But once you start making them look at them, it becomes really difficult for them to ignore because then actual minorities go, hey, you're saying this and you're doing this. And to go back at the last stream, there's a disconnect there, and I think that's what Gamergate has picked up on. But I do believe they talk about it sort of as a distraction to their own problems.
Absolutely.
Yeah, well, I think what was it, Silver Stream Media or whatever, the Anita's company. Someone posted a picture with all the people working there, and it's like 2 women out of 15 people, and they're all white. It's like,
Yeah, just look at the picture of the XOXO Fest. I mean, those were what, 70% straight white dudes?
yeah.
But someone in the chat brought up an interesting question, namely if one of the things to come from Gamergate will be that more or all will switch to Nintendo Direct style streams instead of gaming journalism.
I think that's going to be independent of Gamergate. I think that's actually something that showed itself as being effective at E3. And I think that some people are going to try to emulate it. Personally, I wasn't too thrilled with the whole, the console wars of it all. But I think that that's going to happen independent. But Gamergate, if they pay attention to it, gives them great reason even more to do it.
Regarding Nintendo Direct, all I see it is just a different evolution of Nintendo Power. I think that people are putting a little too much weight and credence behind, Nintendo Direct is going to be the model of the future for everybody else. I wouldn't go so far to say that, because at the end of the day, a company is biased towards its own products. Duh, that's what they're supposed to do. It's like, I explained this on another stream. I'm like, I'm an author. I write books. I think that the shit that I write is the coolest shit that ever happened. I'm biased towards myself. So there's always going to be a need for the independent reporter. There's going to be a need for the independent reviewer. Like, Nintendo is always going to show you their products in the best light, and they're not going to tell you about the things that are wrong with their stuff. Like, I'm not sure if you guys saw this within the past few days. Like, it seems to be that there are some pretty major issues going on with Super Smash Brothers on the 3DS, particularly on the Nintendo 3DS XL, where there's kind of some poor controls, or just poor responsive controls in certain situations, and it's something that needs to be addressed. Well, I certainly didn't hear Nintendo talking about it, and they're not going to talk about it. I mean, they're going to try and fix it, but they're not going to tell you the negative sides of their product. Nintendo isn't going to go. And by the way, if you're not finding what you want here, go somewhere else. You know, we want you to make sure you're spending your money where it's going to best satisfy you. Of course not. They're going to say, don't worry, we got everything you need. So I wouldn't put too much stock in the concept of Nintendo Direct and developer, publisher focused just displaying of the product. I mean, that's always going to happen. Like, Sony's got their own shows, right? Like, they're like, oh, yeah, by the way, here's all the crap that we've got coming out. Yeah, sure, that's fine, but I'm just not. It's not a journalistic medium. It's just another way for an advertiser to directly connect to their consumer and say, by the way, here's the stuff we have coming out.
Yeah, plus Nintendo is still at E3. The Nintendo Direct is just for them, at least at E3, a replacement for the press conference, but they're still at E3 on the show floor for 3 days.
Yeah, but I think actually we're going to see a sort of fusion between streamers or YouTubers and journalists, because actually as well as the journalists are just names, they're blank names above an article. They don't have a personality anymore, and people want that now. I mean, not everyone, of course, but in average, we see the rise of YouTubers. And I think a lot of journalists will start making more streams because people like that. They have to adapt as well. We've been wailing for years that the market should adapt to piracy, and so just like the market has to adapt to piracy, the journalists have to adapt to YouTubers.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It's just that's the nature of business and the nature of time. Things change, and some people are very resistant to change, and some are very fluid to change. And it's kind of like just like how we moved away from magazines, just as the way that we consume the content of our hobby and our gamer culture. Well, we moved to websites because that's where technology went. But some things shouldn't be left behind. And it's tough to figure out what needs to come along for the ride and what needs to get tossed by the wayside. I think one of the unfortunate realities that we're all kind of dealing with right now is that for some reason journalistic ethics was one of those things that got left behind. So it's not that gamers are archaic and done for. It's that some way, somehow, someone, basically got across the idea that it was okay to not, to forget about, by the way, you're a journalist and you have certain responsibilities to your reader base and you have an ethical standard you need to follow. No, it just turned into a giant blog party with people talking about what their random crap looked like after they ate, like, a whole bunch of stupid shit. Like, that's not journalism. That's just a guy talking about what the hell he ate. Like, I get on these sites, and I'm like, why are you telling me this, and why should I care? If I wanted to hear about whatever you ate, what does this have to do with what games are coming out? Like, I don't know where the hell that stuff went, and it doesn't mean that there's not things related to it, but I mean, it's got its own separate time, it's got its own separate place, and we need more structure. Just slightly to diverge on this a little bit, Mrs. Three Dog asked me, she said, why do you think that this situation has come up in the first place? What caused it? And I thought on this for a few days, and I came to her and I said, I think the reason that, like, the just game journalism has turned into this was something that no one else has mentioned. I said, they have too much space to talk. And she stopped and looked at me and said, well, what do you mean? I said, well, back in the day when our medium was contained within magazines and things like that, the fact of the matter is that you didn't have time to bullshit. If you were going to write about something, you needed to do it within the very specific confines of a column of space where you talk about this game. If you only got 3 blocks worth, 3 columns worth, you better get that information out there, and that's what you've got to work with. Or if you're going to write an editorial, your editorial is 2 pages. That's what you've got. And so you have to cut out a lot of fluff and a lot of crap and just get on with it. But now, because of the nature of, websites and just the web pages being able to have as much space as you need to talk about whatever the hell you want, because it's an unlimited column, what has happened is that people will throw a ton of crazy fluff in there that has nothing to do with anything. So I think that if just, and this is just my theory, like, I'm just throwing it against the wall here, I think that if an editor said, hey, by the way, whatever you write, you've got 700 words to do it in, I think you would see a dramatic shift in how articles are written.
Yeah, that actually just reminded me of the whole games crash back in the console days, when Nintendo started out with the Nintendo, and the real major advantage they had was their DRM system. Not everybody could make the game. They had to approve it. And it's just like that, if you have a limited number of words, it's a sort of quality control DRM system. They can't just... if you have to maintain the review within a certain space, you have to cut out things. And if you want to make a good review, the first thing you're going to cut out is your own opinion. You're gonna focus on facts first, and what's left of space you're gonna fill with your opinion later. But I never thought about the space idea, but it's really good actually. They have too much freedom in regards of expressing their own opinion over facts.
I think, sort of going back briefly, I agree with Oliver that things can't be left behind in terms of E3 and coverage. We definitely need the press there. In terms of why press has sort of gotten to this point, I personally think that it has a lot to do, I can't remember who said this, I think it was Archon, or Archon as some people like to call him, that what you end up having is that the amount of time to write a large, well-researched, intelligible article takes hours. I can show it takes me anywhere from 2 to 3 hours to write a really good, well-searched article on Medium, and that is finding sources, aggregating them, whatever. So what you end up having is that instead of creating this beautiful, well-researched, logical piece, you need to churn out as many articles that are getting as many views as quickly as possible to increase your revenue. So you need to spend as little time possible making the biggest wave you can possible and putting it on the website as quickly as possible. So that's why, and according to Archon, that you have these pieces that are, what is, as I said the last stream, I believe, what does a cat's fart smell like? And, what does this video game mean? Or people are upset. Archan it is. What do people, or Final Fantasy 15, that it's all men, and some people are upset about that. Well, what people? Why are they upset? And whenever you look at Final Fantasy characters, as I did, you end up finding that actually the demographics pretty much evenly spread amongst the Japanese population. So if that's the case, and the demographics reflect the Japanese population, which is where Square Enix is located, what is the problem here? That the Japanese game does not reflect Western values? So are you really saying that Western values must be reflected? And if you're saying that, why are you saying that? Well, if we follow what Archan had to say, or Archon, or Arcoon, or whatever you want to call him, if you're following what he has to say, they need to make a splash as quickly as possible with as little work as possible to increase the views, to increase the revenue, to pay for them. If that is the case, then they're not actually concerned with showing that these users are upset. They're actually concerned with pissing you off.
That is deep. That is truly
Yes.
deep. One of the things that I've talked about is just to go along with your Final Fantasy 15 thing and people getting all up in arms. Didn't you remember what we just saw here with Far Cry 4? and everyone freaked out, and they're like, it's a white man on the cover subjugating people. They were so quick to jump to that they didn't even realize that that character was Asian. So, wait a minute. So now you're showing your own biases and your own forms of bigotry and racism because, wait, because the character was blonde, you assumed he was white. So now you're saying that people of other cultures can't dye their hair. Like, what the hell are you guys talking about? Stop projecting what your cultural values onto other cultures. The Japanese, bottom line, are different from us. Doesn't mean I agree with everything that they do or the jokes that they make in their games. I just kind of appreciate them from being a different point of view, from a different people, from a different culture, from a different, entirely different part of the world. I've learned more about just generalized, very generalized Japanese culture just from playing the games that they make and finding and understanding what they find valuable and why they find it valuable. I mean, if anything, video games make us more inclusive in that regard. If you play a game from a developer who, like Mercury Steam, based out of Europe, or you play Gods Will Be Watching by Deconstruct Team, I think those guys are out of Spain or Italy. I can't remember right off the top of my head, but you're going to see these very intricate little differences in developers and what part of the world they're in as they make their games. And it's really offensive to me. Oh dear, we're starting on the offense train. But I do think it's kind of offensive that all these Western presses are turning their nose up like star-bellied sneeches that any other developer from a different part of the world would dare have the audacity to make something that doesn't cater to their westernized, culturized ideas. Like, what are we doing here?
Absolutely. I want to give a great example of this because I researched this just recently in an article I was writing, but Chun-Li from Street Fighter. If you look at Chun-Li from westernized ideals, you see a woman overly dedicated to her father, completely and totally emotional. A
Yes.
woman who... Guys?
Yeah, I'm here.
I'm still here.
I was just wondering, I heard guys. A woman who has no real agency outside of her father, that's clearly dependent, that even though she fights, she loses because she's weak, and in the end, if she does win, she's just the reflection of male values. That is if you use radical feminism to critique it. However,
Or not taking a story in Street Fighter 3 into account when she grew out of that.
well, hold on, because here's the fun. Now let's look at this from Chinese culture, which is where Chun-Li is from as a character. Chinese culture says men are valued within society and that a father's role in the family is so important that the daughter identifies so strongly that should she lose that father, she loses a sense of safety, a sense of love, a sense of belonging. And since that is invested so heavily in this male figure, who, by the way, is the one to completely provide for the family because the woman is just expected to marry. If that is the case and the woman loses her father, that woman must overcome social pressures. She must overcome the demand to marry and to have children, then to learn to fight in a culture that does not value a woman fighting. And not only that, then to go fight these men who would rather kill her. Then on top of all of that,
Kicking most of their asses.
kicking their asses and winning and saving children that she adopts, that says she is someone who values family, values society, and values her role within it and wishes to do good for others.
And people seem to forget she's a cop, too. And a
Yes.
damn good one. So she's also valued justice. That
Yes.
sounds like a pretty badass, awesome character.
So you can look at this from two sort of perspectives. You can look at this sort of as a radical feminist perspective, which is not good or bad in itself. It's a perspective. Or you can look at it from a cultural perspective of Chinese culture, which may value these things, and that Capcom, in their writing, was actually being sensitive to Chinese culture at the time and cultural values. But if we as Americans come in and say, this is wrong, this needs to change, I think that is some of the thing that people pick up on that's happening in terms of Gamergate, especially, excuse me, when you have people such as Leigh Alexander coming in and saying gaming is dead. I'm not a gamer. You all are terrible. You're misogynists. But then you have someone like Christina Hoff Summers coming in, spending time with the community, and then going, "Nah, I don't see much bad." I mean, there really is a disconnect, I think, in terms of the cultures that that sort of are there and the cultures that people want to be there and demand to be there because their perspective says that that's the way that things should be. And I think that's also some of what's driving Gamergate at the moment.
Yeah. Another person I want to bring up that people seem to ignore because he's in the cast with only one hypersexualized character. King from King of Fighters.
Interesting. Why do you say that King is the only
No.
hypersexualized? Or
No. Yeah, you heard that completely wrong. I was saying
okay.
Only because he's in a cast with one hypersexualized character. The hypersexualized character I'm talking about is Mai.
Oh yes, I see what you're saying. You're talking about how because a hypersexualized character comes along, the entire franchise or medium is being judged on that character while ignoring the others.
King, probably one of the most diverse female characters in fighting games. Grew up straight up as a male. And so not that she was a transgender or anything, but she grew up as a male. And slowly showing up herself while still growing as a person as a strong female. Or how about Leona? Or many of these strong females that are barely represented in their games because of one bad example.
I think this brings up an interesting point. And this goes back to sort of the beginning where I talked about Anita Sarkeesian and applying sex-negative critical feminism to examine video games. First off, who says that sex is negative?
Yeah.
I mean, some people happen to think that having their breasts or package or penis or testicles or anything.
That's a great example. That's a great example of this. Female pirates back in those days, you could actually expose their breasts before they killed their targets.
And you know, I think
to say, yeah, I'm a woman and I'm about to blow your fucking brains out.
Yeah, and so that sort of that brings
a nice way to go.
That's also a great distraction.
No, hold on. That's the quote of the evening. I'm a woman and I'm about to blow your fucking brains out. If you take that out of context, that's still the most amazing fucking thing I've ever heard.
God!
But you know, it's like, what is wrong with sexuality? That, you know, we have to say that a woman is devalued because she's a sex object, and that men are sex subjects, and that they're, you know, and that's why sex positive.
Well, if we're talking in the form of real life, it's the woman's choice of that empowerment that she can do whatever the hell she wants. Like, I'm gonna take one of our very own, Jade Fox. Yeah, she does show off her body. There's nothing wrong with that. It's her choice, and she feels entitled and empowered doing so.
Yeah, but that's
not a good thing.
They don't want to give women a choice. They want to dictate upon them a choice.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Yeah, I think that. Go ahead.
I just remembered, because you brought up Jade Fox. I mean, the video Jade Fox did after the video she made because she was harassed. She herself went up and said, "Yeah, I'm a slut," and she said, "Okay, but she just says that's what she is. She self-identifies at that, and she's okay with it. And everybody can be who they want to be, and there's nothing bad about being what you want to be."
Definitely, and I think there's something to be said, especially recently. Everyone is aware of the Spider-Woman cover that garnered quite a bit of attention. I'm not going to go into that because I have my personal opinions on that, but the concept was that she is sexualized, that she is a sexualized fantasy for men, therefore comics are misogyny. Who says that sex has to be bad? Who says that that has to be bad and that is oppression? I mean, this is sort of that question that brings, I think, all of this sort of to a head in that there are people who say on either side, all sides, that something is bad. But whenever you ask them, well, why is this bad? There's no real decent evidence. I actually did research on video game sexism and found out that there are 4 studies. 2 of the studies are calling for more studies. One of the study basically says that video game sexist ideas are actually associated with positive sexism, such as holding doors open, wanting to defend women, versus negative sexism. So that means that video games that show sexist women actually make men have sexist views that are positive, or are associated, not makes, but they're associated with them.
With politeness. What
Yeah.
what many people would believe is of chivalrous actions.
That's I can't remember the exact name, but I'm just going to call it positive sexism.
Yeah.
But then the second study actually said that the personality traits of gamers that are associated with sexist attitudes in sexist video games and predisposition to those are, in no uncertain order, men who like to have power, men who feel they have to have power over women, and men who have to announce their heterosexuality and identify heavily with heterosexual norms and values.
Yeah.
You know what I call those 3 things? Sexist beliefs, because you have to have power over women. Women must be, disequal. If that's the case, ignoring that, quite frankly, that's really not sexism. You can just argue that that's just how society raises men. Really, that finding says that sexist attitudes lead to people playing sexist video games. Surprise! Which,
Yeah.
by the way, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say, it would be great, by the way, if there are any women who wish to join us, please shout. And I should note that I am a gay man. Therefore, I kind of bring a different perspective to all this.
And it should go without saying that we want to hear everyone's opinion and everyone's take on these situations, because everyone does have a very different life experience, and so you will see things that we don't.
Yep, kind of like I do. Like, I will end up seeing isms in a different way and how to defeat isms. Me personally, the way that I believe that you have to defeat isms is by getting in there and changing people's point of view from the inside, instead of being like, you're sexist, change. So
while we're seeing if we can't get a few ladies or a lady in here to speak with us on the subject, let me take a look at one of the other questions that we have, and I'll let one of you guys field it first. The question is, does the perception of gamers as stereotypes in the media affect how games are marketed to audiences? And
let me answer that, even though I'm not really part of this.
Question's not finished. Hold on. It looks like a two-parter, in that it was a perception of gamers as stereotypes in the media affect how games are marketed to audiences, and wouldn't that in turn sabotage the claims that those who use stereotypes want inclusivity?
I know people don't want to talk about Jim Sterling because of his neutrality on this, but he made a very good point when he spoke about this before, when it came to how focus testing is a big reason why we're getting a lot of stuff that we are. Focus testing is a horrible way to gauge your audience.
I agree.
Because they never say what they want, they say what you think they want.
Absolutely.
Because they're put in the spotlight. They're put in the sight. And it makes them say things that they really don't believe or see. And they could, because business is trying to hear what audience say. And nobody got time for that.
He is making a point. I have observed that phenomenon where if you take people, you put them in a focus group to test a product or evaluate a product before it comes to market, especially if you're compensating them for their time. with that product, chances are they're going to be more likely to say the positive thing that you wanted them to say in the first place, versus how the live audience is going to, the real audience is going to react to that thing, when rather than getting compensated, they are actually having to make that investment, be it of their time or their money. And it is a very poor method of going about testing a product.
I definitely agree. To approach the question from a, again, sociological, anthropological, psychological point of view, yes. I consider just leaving it there. Be like, yes. Whenever you market any video game, if you're going to market to men, you're typically going to try to hit sort of the stereotypical male. You're going to try to have high action, high
The blow.
octane behaviors. You're going to have boobs and you're going to have butts. You're going to sexualize things because that's what people say men want.
Whoa, and let me add on to that. Have you ever noticed that sometimes with trailers that don't do, with games that don't have that sort of action and that sort of style, they're very vague with the advertisement? You know what that tells me as a consumer? They don't know how to market to anybody else.
Yeah, every once in a while you get that, and it's. I think when that happens, it affects how you market the game, and it affects who's going to buy the game. For example, this is going to be a weird moment. I really liked Final Fantasy 13 as a series. Most people,
man.
Yeah,
we gotta. Oh.
See, I knew that was going to happen.
I'm gonna have to take. We're gonna have to find out what happened, my boy.
He was my favorite guy, man. Not gonna shut you down.
Well, here's the thing. I liked many Final Fantasies. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. I actually liked 10 too a little bit. 13 didn't like 12.
1, 4, 5, 6, 9. Didn't like 10. I didn't like 10 too. 12. And yeah, that's about it.
It's like you can usually people are like, here's what I liked. Sorry,
I'm gonna call it a limb here, and I say Final Fantasy 8.
Yes, 8 was also good. Usually I go with the evens.
However, I like 8. I like 8, but I don't like the draw system.
I love the system. I think the story of the rest of the game is kind of weird, but I love the draw system and the combining system.
Yeah, grind, draw.
We're gonna
Just
bring
100 Ultima.
I don't like grinding in an RPG. I never have.
We're gonna bring it back around. Come on, gonna corral you. I also liked Heavy Rain and Beyond. I actually have it sitting over there. I had to look at the name. I couldn't remember Beyond Two Souls. And those games are were marketed differently, considering that I'm a male. But at the same time, do not get me wrong, I do love an action game as well. So with that said, how do you market to someone, me? Do you assume I'm male? So, put in the boobs, or what have you, the stereotype. Do you assume I'm gay and you put in big hulking men because that's going to appeal to the sexual side? Or do you assume that I'm going to like narratives? Because I do love narratives. I also do love mechanics. So, I get both at the same time. So what do you assume that I'm going to do? And if you hit the wrong one, am I going to buy your game? Yes, no, that's kind of up in the air. But I do think that what ends up happening is the advertisers, because they have to shotgun it, they assume that I am going to be what console gamers are, or who console gamers are, typically white heterosexual men. But I think that's about to change because the ESA is now, as everybody has seen multiple times, said that half of gamers are women. So I think that marketing is now going to assume that you're a woman, and there's a stereotype there. So I do think that stereotypes, whenever they're for marketing, they assume certain things, and it's really kind of not cool for them to do it. And then there was another question that
Sorry, I was talking out loud.
Okay, I'm going to piggyback someone that just asked a question, and that is, what kind of experiences can minority characters give that majority characters can't? From an LGBT point of view, every once in a while, it would be nice to see a character that has, I'm just going to say, Bill, like from The Last of Us, having him there and him just exist, that he didn't have to make this a huge deal, that he was just there. That was huge.
I want to name another character. People asking how we consider the first characters. People seem to forget Grand Theft Auto San Andreas really did a good job. Even though it was mostly a satire of many political things, it shed light on a lot of African American issues at that time and shown it in honestly probably one of the best ways you could.
Just honestly, yeah.
Honestly, with a little bit of comedy mixed in, so you don't feel drowned out by all the negativity.
Yeah, and one of the things I think, though, we have to watch out for, and this is about to turn into a personal moment, is whenever you have something called tokenism, which if you're a minority, you know what that is.
Yes.
That's whenever you have the sagging character who's black, who's like hanging on you, like, yo, what's up? I'm the black man.
Well,
And
to be fair, at least with Carl Johnson, I think they did a good job subverting that.
Yeah, I mean, and that's one great way to sort of undercut that. And Bill from The Last of Us, a great way. Bill could have easily been like, "Hi, I'm the gay character. Let's run around and let's kill things. Oh goodness." I mean, that could actually have happened, but instead they made him a substantive, strong character. There's also the two characters from The Walking Dead season 2. Loved. So sad what happened to them.
I
think,
know exactly what you're talking about. The
Yeah.
guy who got shot on the bridge.
Yeah, Walter and
you found out later that the guy was the man's. Oh my God, that was such an amazing moment. I was like,
You know, I wanted to follow up, especially because you're here, Jay, talking
Did
about
I
that
just
type of
spoil that?
diversity. Yeah, you spoiled the hell out of that.
I'm sorry,
You
spoiler.
ruined it, man. He ruined it for the whole audience, man.
He
That's
did.
the whole game. You should be ashamed of yourself.
Horrible.
But talking about Bill in The Last of Us, I 100% agree with Jay. I thought that was one of the best representations that I've seen of a homosexual character within the video game medium.
Right.
I kind of wanted to touch on this, especially because you know, you've clearly told people that you're homosexual, Jay, and I wanted part of this I want your opinion on in the way that I've gone about doing it. If you guys don't, for the folks that don't know, I also write fiction, and that, you know, I write that fiction with my wife, and those products are available on Amazon. One of the things that I did in building my high fantasy series, it's called The Twisted World, and part of that narrative thing in which you're talking about just having a fair shake at representation and not tokenizing, putting the tokenism aspect into it, but exploring the space of what it's like to be a person who is homosexual or being black or being a woman, and rather than just taking advantage to get a market share, it's examining that person's type of life. What I ended up doing with one of the characters, one of the key characters in the lore of my world is a lesbian. And what I ended up doing with her, I was originally she wasn't, and you know, just as I'm blocking out the story and how this is going to happen, and I stopped and I looked at this and I said, how can I make this more interesting and explore the narrative dynamic? And I said, you know, if she were a lesbian, that would create a lot of different situations. And I don't mean in the, ooh, hot lesbian sex kind of way that, you know, you hear guys talk about. No, I was like, how would that affect her relationships with other people? And so what I did was I sat down and was like, yeah, this lady is this queen of the barbarians, essentially. Like, she just shows up and starts dominating folks and just takes over. And she's like, yeah, by the way, I run this shit. But then time comes for her to make a successor, and she's like, but she's not really into guys. I mean, that's just not her thing. She has no romantic inclination towards men. And she marries a woman, but she knows that she still needs to have children. And so rather than, you know, it's the opposite for men. Rather than having a mistress, she has these suitors in order to have children. And I thought it would create that much better of a story dynamic. What is your take on that? As a creator, am I examining that in the right way? Just exploring the narrative space of this kind of life.
Okay, we're gonna get off topic, and y'all just chat in the chat, and that's y'all do chatty things. The first thing you always have to establish is if there's any sort of prejudice within the society, because in some cultures aren't. There is one African area, country, or tribe, or I can't remember exactly what it's called, but the men we're going to get. I'm going to try and not be graphic here, but whenever a boy reaches the age of manhood, the village men sort of pass on their life essence, if you get what I mean. And that's normal. That's accepted. That's okay. So what you have is a culture where that's not a problem. Then you come over in westernized cultures where it is a problem because we had sort of prejudices introduced into our society. Now, if that was not present, if prejudice were not part of our lives, my experience would be, I'm alive. Ta-da! It's not special. It is what it is. It's like anything else. Someone who's black being black, someone who's white being white. It is part. It is an existence. It's who we are. It's an identity like any other thing. Yes, I do apologize. I'm trying not to derail. And I'm going to bring this back to Gamergate. I do think that you do have a point, because wherever you're building within your kind of narrative culture, and I think if you're mindful about that, whenever you create your narrative culture, that you do so in a way that is there a prejudice? And if there's not, that's okay. One of the things you should know is that lesbians in westernized culture tend to have a higher value. They tend to see more positively, and they actually have higher pay than gay men. Lesbians actually make about equal to straight men, and gay men used to actually make less than heterosexual women on the dollar, but you never heard about that. So with that said, bringing this back to Gamergate in some way, because oh my god, I got to pull this out of my rear end, I think if we're cognizant of any sort of a prejudice that someone is experiencing, and we try and take that into account, even if it's difficult, even if we dislike them, we can establish some sort of a commonality in our discussion, and we can approach that discussion in a way that, I'm pulling this so far out of thin air, can be of value both to their cultural understanding as well as their approach. How's that dismount?
I actually agree with that. Anybody here is familiar with Douglas Adams?
Of course.
People seem to forget he was a raging atheist. Didn't even try to hide it. He was straight up atheist. But when he writes about religion, he always writes about it in amazing ways, with respect for it, while bringing a great twist to it. Just because he's atheist doesn't mean he sets himself off from bringing that up in his work. No, it's more reason for him too.
Yeah, and I mean, that's actually one of the things in representing any sort of minority, is to represent that minority individually, and this includes religion, so I'm pulling in what Kenny had to say, and I think really the only way you can do that is to do so on an individualist basis, individually and, in context with experiences, but at the same time being mindful that there are some sort of behaviors that, you can tend to see. I mean, if you're a lesbian, you're going to tend to like women, and you're going to tend to like certain kind of women. Now, you may be different, but the statistical average is still there. So always being mindful of individual experiences.
And it's also, and when we're dealing with race and gender, there's so many things to bring up. Upbringing. Not every black guy grew up in Compton or Newark. So not everyone's gonna have that behavior or style.
Yeah. So I mean.
Yeah, that's a great point. Just that whole nature versus nurture and environment and where you are. I mean, I talk very different from most what most people would be familiar with black people. But then wait a minute, I grew up in one of the whitest places in this country, and I went to a school that was like had like 5 black kids in it at any given time. And it's not that there weren't black kids around; it's just that I didn't have a choice.
I grew up.
Open enrollment and things like that. But it obviously tapered my behaviors and people's expectations, and just I'm a part of the culture that I grew up in.
Yeah, like me personally, I was born in East Orange, but I grew up most of my life for the first 4 years, North Carolina, and then I moved up here back to New Jersey. So yeah, I might have that little comment of how I talk with that, but I'm not that. I'm not what people would see as a stereotypical black male. At least I hope not.
Well, I mean, and again, it kind of goes back to that individual existence and
Yes,
being mindful of that. And then I want to piggyback.
People are individuals first. Their race, their gender should be secondary. It
A
shouldn't
lot of
be. Well, not secondary. It shouldn't be their main gimmick.
Yes, and I just
Right.
want to highlight something because I do have to go. I stayed an hour later than I intended to,
Oh,
but I
okay.
want to highlight this comment from Sour Grape. You were right about that. The LGBTQ, I hate the Q, crowd just wants to be like everyone else, not used as pawns for diversity. That is true, and that is also a little false. On one hand, we do want you to kind of go, yeah, you've experienced some stuff. Me personally, I've experienced some stuff. Some stuff that other people won't, I've experienced things that Kenny won't, and Oliver's experienced things I won't. I will never have to worry about one thing, Oliver, that I heard on your stream. I heard it and kind of jaw dropped. But whenever Oliver was with his wife at E3, his wife was the person that some press looked at and talked to and treated as a professional. I'll never have to deal with that. But on the flip side, Oliver will never have to deal with going to a courtroom and begging a judge, please let me go see my spouse. Because if he is married, he won't have to do that. I will have to do that. I can't marry where I'm from. So we each have those experiences. We do want you to notice that this exists, but at the same time, we do want to be like everybody else. We do want to have quality characters. We do want to have good storylines, but we want them to be good. We do not want them to be poor quality. We do not want to be tokens. And I swear to God, we do not want to be Kurt from Glee, because that shit's not cool. And to answer Pie Eater's question, what is it about the Q? Me personally, I like the LGB because that says, that's an identity. The Q is just this nebulous sort of, it's kind of like POC. I personally don't like POC, people of color. I think that's insulting, but apparently for some people it's like a power. We're power together. I don't adopt the Q, or really the T, but that doesn't really apply to me. The Q is too nebulous. So with that said, I am going to take my leave for the night. I thank you, gentlemen and lady who was with us briefly. You can all, if you choose, follow me on Twitter at Cain, as in the guy who murdered his brother in the Bible, EJW. CAINEJW. I write things on Medium. You probably saw something that I wrote called The Little Narrative of Gamergate, as well as a defense of Christina Hoff Sommers against Polygon that pretty much handed them their ass. That's what I do. I look at things and I try.
That was you?
That was me.
Yo, I love that article, man.
That was me, and I write many more. Yeah.
The article was sick.
Feel free. I have more. In fact, I just did one this weekend that was looking at the demographics of Final Fantasy characters and comparing it to the assertion that Final Fantasy characters are homogeneously male. I actually found they're representative of the Japanese population. So there's what that is. You can feel free to follow me. Feel free to comment. If you're going to do a stream, please let me know. I work until 5 because I'm one of those stuffy people. So I do think that this was wonderful, and I thank you all for letting me entertain you.
Oh, I had a great time. It just this is my first time speaking with you. I didn't even know that that you had been on some of my original streams when all this kind of stuff started. And I will be following you, and I want to see those Medium articles because you have a level of input that I don't even think people realize. And I want to see everything that you have to say.
Well, Commit, sometimes you'll agree with me, sometimes you won't. All I ask is you please do not blow up my email address with things to fix because they come to my phone, and if I'm with a client, I don't want to hear bzz, 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 bzz. I'm not
Naturally.
Kenny. I don't. It's inappropriate. But anyway, I do
Wait, what?
apologize that I've taken up so much time in doing this.
No.
I'm wordy.
No, it was nice listening.
So thank y'all very much. Y'all have a wonderful evening, and I'm leaving the call now.
Later, man.
Well, that was fantastic.
Indeed.
Let me see if I have any other questions for the rest of us who are still here. Just for you guys that are in the chat right now, just remember, go ahead and keep those questions flowing because I am writing them down and I'm addressing them just in order that they come in. One of the older questions that I had here that hadn't exactly been covered, but is partially related to the last question that we had, was what do you think of the argument that using stereotypes of gamers actually kills inclusivity and multiculturalism in gaming? Go.
Yes and no. I mean, well, first off, sadly, still, not all stereotypes are false, and there are some people who do like and enjoy them. Even people of that said stereotype that are being attacked. The problem comes from those that don't and how they view it. Do they view it as offensive? Do they view it in a way that personally harms them? Some people do have a sense of humor and don't really care much for it. It varies between person to person. It's a very hard thing to gauge, at least personally.
Anyone else want to chime in on that?
Actually, you mean stereotypes applied to gamers or to characters in games?
You know, that's a good question. They didn't really elaborate on that
That's
in
what
this
I think.
question.
Because I think stereotypes applied to gamers, well, we've seen that happening the last couple of weeks, and it's definitely hurt.
I thought they was applying that to games themselves. Because they're applying that to the games themselves and the characters within games, and yeah, that's my point. But if they're not,
The stereotypes in games, I agree with you. They always are connected to a certain level of humor, and that's why a lot of people get pissed off because of them. Because a lot of people don't have a sense of humor, or at least seem to turn off their humor when they play video games. When I see a complete over-the-top representation of a given stereotype, it really just sticks out. I get it. Okay, this is meant as satire. It's not meant seriously. But some people take it seriously, and that is hurting the diversity because stereotypes allow us to expand into other cultures. Because, yeah, we perceive other cultures through mass media, and there they are being reduced to stereotypes. So if you want a quick hand for other cultural person, you pick a stereotype.
Anyone else? Before I give my answer, I just want to make sure everyone else has a chance to speak first.
well,
Okay. And, you know, since the question was kind of ambiguous, I'll go ahead and cover it on both ends. Let me look at this again. The argument that using stereotypes of gamers actually kills inclusivity and multiculturalism in gaming. Well, I mean, if you look at it from the player point of view, it is kind of tricky because let's say what is the gamer stereotype? Well, it's operating off the assumption that the vast majority, which or just gamers in general, are considered white men of a certain age range and a certain socioeconomic status and a girth and all these other things like that. I think it's bad because it creates kind of a hostile environment. Well, what am I talking about? Kind of creates a hostile environment. It is a hostile environment. We're currently living it. we're sitting here watching people scream and throw, I don't know, just like the world's largest temper tantrum, in a sense, behind these different games when they don't realize that there are games that do actually suit their taste already. They're out there. If you want them, go find them, go buy them. It's not hard to locate those titles. Using the stereotype actually can, using stereotypes in the creative process can harm your inclusivity and the multiculturalism, because it's kind of like dealing with status quo. If people expect that content is a certain way based on that status quo, then they will always expect it to be that way, and they won't ever just dive in and go digging for the things that they will be surprised by and go, holy crap, I didn't even know this is here, and I wouldn't have gone looking if someone hadn't shown it to me. So we have to be really careful. Like, there's a such thing as too much inclusiveness. I know that might make someone mad, but I'm just talking from being from outside of the forest looking in. When you think about it, it's almost a type of dilution, in a sense, where if everyone is included, then we start losing unique perspective. We can lose that if, like, I don't know, let's throw a theory out there. Let's say that what would the ultimate inclusivity be? Let's say Grand Theft Auto 6. Now let's see that every single minority, every single just every person of color, so to speak, every sexuality was all represented in the main cast. I think that it would be kind of difficult for people to follow along in certain things, because some characters would be talking about completely foreign concepts to certain parts of the audience. Part of our job creating content is making sure that we can connect with our audience in ways that we know specifically speaks to them. Take a look at, like, Gone Home, for instance. I haven't played Gone Home, and I have no interest in it. But I do know what Gone Home is about, and I've looked over the content, and I've looked over the narrative. And even though I'm not going to give Gone Home the time of day, I can look at this and say, I bet there are some very specific people who need to play this game, and it will make a big difference in their life. Considering that the subject matter is two girls in a relationship together, I bet that there are a lot of girls who are having problems coming to terms, just dealing with society in general, with their sexuality or their romantic interest and things like that, and it may be a very cathartic experience for them. But I'm not that target audience. I'm not the audience for that product. And it's not up to me to tell everyone else that, well, you have to enjoy this content because I said you do. No, no one is in charge of that. The people who want to consume a particular type of content, if they show up and consume it, then they're the audience. That's just what it comes down to.
Hello?
Yeah.
Hello?
Now would be the right time for this voice thing again from before, where you can make the voice of the God, how is it called in English? Yeah, but anyway, but for Gamergate, I think you're right, because Gone Home, those games have an audience. There are people out there who want to play games like that, and they're perfectly legitimate to ask for that game on such games alike. But the feeling that a lot of people have been getting in the last couple of weeks is they are trying to forcefully create a market for those games, to make people buy them despite they are not the audience.
No, not even that. Despite a market already existing, you can't have a market grow synthetically. It has to be organic.
Yeah, people have to want to play the game.
Console first-person shooters did not just get popular with GoldenEye. It took years for them to build that up.
Wasn't it Time Crisis that actually made the final push?
It was some people will say Time Splitters, other people will say Halo.
Yeah, Time Split, you're right.
But
yeah,
but that's still a while after GoldenEye, even though GoldenEye made it popular. and a market will grow organically on its own. Things die because they try to synthetically grow the market. Look what happened to the plastic music genre. How many of our Guitar Hero and Rock Band guitars are sitting in our closet collecting dust?
I threw them out about 3 months ago because they pushed this shit so hard on everyone. Everybody liked it at the start, and everybody got so fed up with it.
That's absolutely true. You're dead spot on that. Markets are going to grow organically, and if you push too hard, we will reject it so fast. I mean, you just made the example out of Guitar Hero. How about the huge 3D push that they tried to do again? You know, you have the Nintendo 3DS and all that, and we were like,
Not even that. Not even that. The initial start of 3D graphics back when the PlayStation 2, when you had the PlayStation 1, the 3DO, whenever they try to push that sort of style on everyone, especially Sony, they almost failed because of that concept. It's why Nintendo was able to stick out so long with the SNES, with the Super Nintendo, and 16-bit consoles.
You know, when I was a kid, there's a particular article that always stuck out in my mind. I talked to my wife about that pretty often. It was an editorial in EGM talking about the potential pitfalls of just 3D and how it's going to cause problems in certain genres because they won't adapt well. Like, how do you transfer, think about how long it took for them to figure out how to make 3D characters, polygon-based characters, actually function at the speed of a traditional sprite-based fighter. It took a long time for someone to pull off that same thing because it was such a problem.
And you still can't emulate the 2D style, and you still can't emulate a fully 2D style of fighter on a fully 3D plane.
It's very difficult.
Because of the mechanics of various things, like Fireballs loses all worth once you add a Z-axis.
Yeah, my favorite example of that is the difference between Dungeon Keeper 1 and Dungeon Keeper 2. Dungeon Keeper 2 is 3D and it looks almost static compared. The animations are so bulky and slow, it just looks lifeless, while Dungeon Keeper 1 with its sprites, it's just cheery. It's just fun watching these little fuckers run about.
Or for people watching here, that it's like one of the initial complaints between Diablo 3 versus 1 and 2. Using those classic sprites and is kind of, you moved almost like you were on a grid, very just locked into it. But that was part of the charm for people. And then how Diablo 3, obviously made the huge push into modern technology, and people were met with resistance. It's why sprite-based, no matter how detailed a resolution the sprites are, that's never going to die. Because it's just, frankly, it's a far more effective method for certain types of games than 3D.
Also, 2D graphics, at least very good, colorful ones, they don't age as horribly as 3D.
Yeah, that's true.
Super Metroid looks still great. Sorry, but I love that game.
That's true.
Tell me this, because ultra realism stops looking realistic after 5 or 10 years. But a game with a certainly cartoonish style, like, I don't want to say it because I will get, like the Dragon Ball Z games on the PlayStation 2, like Budokai 3. It still looks good to this day because it didn't try to push 3D to its high capabilities. It tried to make a good art style.
Yeah, but the prime example is and will remain World of Warcraft. The main reason of success of World of Warcraft was its graphic style. I think it was easy enough for most people to get in. It was low graphics, so you could run a huge MMO, and due to the comic style, it still looked good.
Yeah, but I think we went on a tangent.
No, not quite. We actually did not go on a tangent. It's actually kind of related. It all feeds into itself. Just think about just that transition and things like that. To mention World of Warcraft, initially I was going to disagree until you said the part after part of the success. That's something I've been trying to tell people for years and nobody listens to me. I say World of Warcraft wasn't successful because it did things so different and huge and oh my goodness. As you know, most MMOs kind of play like World of Warcraft. I said the two things that made that game successful were that it was very polished in comparison to its competitors, low bugs, just again comparatively, and I said, and the barrier to entry was way lower than anybody else at the time. You could get in there and you could run World of Warcraft on a freaking toaster because it was just so easy.
I used to before I built my own rig, I was running that on on one of those old gray compact PCs back in the 90s. It was still running like it was wildfire.
Exactly. It's barrier to entry, especially in the PC market.
And I think
the difference of your success.
The Sims is a great example of that as well. Well, not 4, but let's not get into that. The Sims have always had a lower graphical fidelity, not only for it to have a more looser style in terms of its character looks,
just hardware system requirements.
Yeah, to make it easier for many people to get into it. Both hardcores like myself, who play The Sims. Yeah, I don't need to know why I play The Sims, but
hey, there ain't nothing wrong with that. I play The Sims. Like, you should hear the tangent I'm going on why The Sims is one of the most perfect games ever made.
Oh yeah.
I bet people in chat are gonna freak out hearing me say that. Like,
no.
Oh no, Three Dogs are filthy casual. Like if I told you.
No. I mean, if they say that about Sims 3, okay, but definitely not Sims 2. I love Sims 2.
Sims 2 is no joke. Sims 2, in fact, what I consistently say when people say, "Oh, what's the best expansion ever?" I say, Sims 2 University is the best expansion ever created for a video game.
Yes. Yes.
Like, I look at it and I can't find anything wrong with The Sims 2 for additional content added for $1, for not devaluing the core content of the game, what it adds to the experience. Like I've never seen any expansion so carefully plotted.
And it kind of makes me sad that what was supposed to replace the expansion packs, DLC, has been so underwhelming.
It really has been. It has been a completely underwhelming experience. I blame Bethesda for that with that damn horse armor.
Oh,
if they hadn't fucked it up for everybody.
Do not let me get angry about Oblivion. People hate that I hate Oblivion. Yeah, guys, hear that? I don't like Elder Scrolls 4 Oblivion. So
yeah, Morrowind was way better.
Morrowind is better than all 3 of the recent new Elder Scrolls games. Yes,
that sounds like some hipster talk to me.
No. Skyrim is great, but Morrowind's better. Skyrim is great, but Morrowind is better.
Morrowind is awesome. You start the game, go straight into the slave camp above the main capital, run in, loot every chest in the area, and you have a full set of dwarven armor and a glass sword for free. And everybody's just standing there looking at the empty chests.
So, the way that all this ties in to Gamergate, surprisingly enough, is here's the thing. What we're talking about, guys, is that there are clearly diversity of game experiences available to people. The Sims, just as a franchise, is now I may be wrong, but the last I heard is just for sheer units moved, The Sims is still the #1 PC selling franchise of all time.
It is.
It just is. And the thing is, the market for The Sims is mostly casual playing women. And, I sat down and asked my wife, and, and other ladies I know, I'm like, okay, you're into The Sims, like, tell me, why are you into it?
Wait, I got a funny fact. Do you know who got me into The Sims 2? My ex. My ex. I'm sitting there like, what the heck is this? Are you playing with virtual dolls? That's exactly what I said. It's virtual dolls. And she was like, give this game 30 minutes.
Right.
Yep. Sorry, but The Sims is a bit evil. It's basically digital crack.
Right. You
No,
can
no,
get
no,
in there and
that's
you can have
exactly
a
what
ball.
No, and let me finish my story. 3 hours later, she was asking me. She was actually trying to grab me off the computer, and I'm a big guy, so I'm sitting there holding onto the keyboard, trying desperately not to let go.
And that is that basic reason that you just said. Like you're like, why are you playing with dolls? That was the most consistent answer I heard across the ladies that I spoke to about it. And I kind of stopped and thought, and I was like, huh, yeah, I guess Sims kind of is a digital version of the classic dollhouse that many of my female friends grew up with. So it was an evolution of that idea, and I was like, but yeah, you have a lot
Actually,
more control over that. I was like, that's really interesting.
If Will Wright was anything to say, that was absolutely the point.
Well,
that was the point.
Well, here's the thing. Here's what's really interesting about The Sims. I did quite a bit of research into it back in the day to find out, like, how the hell did Will Wright come up with this? And it is the most basic thing I've ever thought of. It's really funny to look at it because he already made a game based on this premise.
I think it was I forget the name of it, but he did. I know what game you're talking about, but he released so much Sims games back in the '90s, we lose track.
Wasn't there like a Sim Ant Farm or something like that?
Correct.
Sim Ant.
The Sims is just based on Sim Ant. Yep. All it is that how The Sims as a game functions is that he's like, well, I wanted to see if I could expand the idea of Sim Ant into a full thing as a people simulator. And again, I'm just paraphrasing, but he was like, I can use the same concept as the ant pheromone trail and attach that to people and just call that motivations. And that's why your sim, has those decreasing bars, because then that's how they interact with the environment, is that every object place has a quote-unquote hidden pheromone trail. And as a sim's needs decrease, they will seek out the objects that will best satisfy those particular needs. So it's kind of like when you sit down, you play The Sims, and they're low on fun, and you can't get those fuckers to put down the goddamn game console. It's because it fulfills that need better than any other fun object in the house.
Like, goddamn it, just play the guitar. It does the same thing.
Right. They don't care.
So what you're telling me is it's all semantics?
You're grounded. See me after class. And so how all this comes together with Gamerdeep, and that is that it just so happens, I don't think we need to go out of our way and like shoehorn, this is a game for women. No, if you advertise to them in a correct fashion and with again, I'm using this loosely, some traditional female interests. I don't mean to say, oh, this is what women are interested in, because, a ton of ladies are going to show up and say, I don't care about that. No, I'm just saying, if you just do the basic advertising and things like that, you will get a response. Here's the reason the Nintendo DS is one of the best-selling consoles of all time. If you remember when the DS came out, it wasn't doing too hot at the start. But then, as my wife pointed out to me, because I didn't even notice, she said, yeah, women love the DS. And I was like, what are you talking about? She's like, well, look at all the units that have been moved. I was like, okay, and? She's like, have you been paying attention to the commercials? And then I stopped, and I went and looked at the commercials. And you remember Beyonce did a commercial for Rhythm Heaven with a rose pink DS Lite. And I was like, yeah, they're doing a lot of heavy advertising to women. And so Nintendo changed the narrative just for the general woman audience and said, why aren't you playing games? It's not all about blood and guts and killing and a macho thing. There's a little something here for everybody. Come in and stay a while. And they did.
Come in and stay.
That's why women are such a significant part of our gaming demographic now, is because Nintendo brought everyone back in. It's, we all laugh about the Nintendo Wii. Guess who bought that console?
Women and children.
Women and children and people who don't typically game. You had elderly people like, oh snap, I can get up on that Wii bowling. They got in there because they said, hey, by the way, we have content here for you.
And
so
even
that was
even
the whole point of the Wii.
even the tagline for the Wii U was
Wii.
very welcoming to everyone.
We, all of us, get to play.
Would like to play.
That was it. And so I think that part of the Gamergate problem is that they're like, you're excluding minorities and women, and that's not the case.
The first time I heard that commercial, I was like, this console is going to explode. I don't even like it. This console is going to explode.
Right. But so you see, it's not about as an industry, people creating content that's intentionally hurtful and excluding women. It's that no one is actually going, oh, by the way, we have all these other flavors available. It's like going into a burger restaurant and everyone's like, oh, this is a burger place and I can't eat beef. You're excluding me. And the rest of us are going, motherfucker, you do know that there's chicken and fries and all kinds of other shit on the menu. Like, we're all going, what are you talking about? This restaurant has plenty of choices. Even if you don't like beef, you have options. But they're going, no, you sell burgers, therefore you're not catering to me. It's like, whoa, slow down, chief. Look at the damn menu. Do you want a milkshake? Just get a fucking milkshake then.
Yeah,
like, it's not that big of a deal.
I think everybody can agree that marketing is just as guilty of not bringing in more female gamers.
Yeah, sure.
Here's the thing. Another thing Jim said, and I think it's because of the fear of not moving units. I'm not sure what happened to marketing balls, because I don't know what happened. It's like they lost their ball somewhere. Sorry.
Yeah, it became a business. This reminds me of a story where car sales...
No. Here's the thing. There's nothing wrong with being a business. A good businessman will find a gem in dirt.
Yeah, that's true.
But these guys, what's happening here is that they're so afraid to dig through it, to attempt, and most of that fault is their own. The overhyping of most games, this massive advertisement thing that makes it to the point that most of the money that is budgeting on the game is going to the freaking marketing more than anything, and completely overblowing the budget of the actual game. It makes it that when people do try something new and different, it's so much more of a risk, and so much more devs and publishers are not willing to take it.
And I can tell you why. I'm currently studying business in university. The problem is it's all about turning a really quick profit to please shareholders. If you don't get shareholders
who have become more panicked due to the recent financial crisis.
Exactly.
So I saw a comment in here in chat that someone was talking about expansion packs, and I did kind of want to address that because I think it's a worthy topic discussion. They said all these day one patches are a super unhealthy trend that I hope is inevitably sustainable, and we can get back to releasing complete, relatively bug-free games. Also go back to expansion packs. Well, I kind of want to shed some light on that business practice and why it happens. You see, back in the day, when we were playing games, on cartridges and other more permanent style media, like back in the basically, we'll just say PS2 era and backwards from there. The reason we got such bug-free games basically came down to money, in that it was really expensive to get cartridges made for games. I mean, we all know about the Nintendo 64 debacle of, well, there were good games, but damn, these cartridges are expensive to make.
And here's a perfect game that was a perfect example of that. Who here didn't have WWE No Mercy?
I didn't.
Oh, nice.
Who don't remember the No Mercy bug that got rid of all your created characters?
Oh, Jesus.
Yeah.
Oh.
The Mortal Kombat bug where I couldn't fish the 265th fight.
Oh
my God. Wow.
They just ran into stack overflow at some point.
I know I brought y'all back.
And here's
But
what ended up happening in regards to that, those kinds of bugs. And so, most you'd be surprised how many people don't know that quite a few games out there. There are several different versions. There's version 1.0 or 1.1 or 1.2, even Chrono Trigger.
Guys who get certain things from the internet that I don't want to talk about because I don't want to see them supporting piracy. They know that now because they have to download. They see these certain version types every time they download it. And it's a weird and it's but and be, we're more privy to that now. And trust me, it's not like it's impossible. Back in the day, that game didn't have bugs, especially cartridge and CD ones. We just talked about No Mercy. Gran Turismo 2's 98.5 bug that made it impossible to 100% the game because a car was locked. There were so many of those games that but when the advent, not even with the advent of DLC, but with the advent of CD, which was cheaper to produce than the normal cartridges, patches became a bit more apparent.
Well, not even so much with CDs. I mean, let's look at the first major transition from cartridge heavily, hardware-based media to the read-only memory media. Really, what ended up happening there is that cartridges are expensive to produce, and heaven forbid you have a game-breaking bug. You're gonna have to go through, and you might even have to pull stock, and that's the kind of stuff that could break a company. But with a read-only CD, they were cheap to produce. And so even if you did have bugs, you could easily reproduce and reissue a new master print of that. It didn't break the bank in order to produce a CD, where you kept the hardware more focused on the actual hardware that played it rather than it being split between the hardware that the game is running on versus the hardware that you receive it. And once the disc-based media came around, we did start seeing more and more bugs, but it didn't, it wasn't nearly as apparent. I mean, even then with the PS2, yeah, you still have buggy games here and there.
I know that, but I'm saying, and it also, and now it elevated. Now they don't even have to charge for the CD anymore.
Right. Now we're up to digitally distributed, or even games that are still shipping on a disc, with current gen and last gen. But now that developers can do title updates, they can save a crap ton of money because they don't even have to reissue the game. They don't have to do reprints. They don't need to do recall of stock and take a huge cash dive. And it's resulted, unfortunately, in this very bad behavior of developers shipping either incredibly buggy product, and it's like, well, just forget it. We've got a gold master, and then we'll just do a day one patch.
Sock Puppet is giving us the he's giving us the wrap it up box.
Yeah, I see that. Basically, what it comes down to here is that with this new patching problem, is that it just ended up creating that issue because it got easier for developers to go with the idea of we'll solve it later. Once again, I fail games that are broken at day one. I actually do not patch games initially when I put them in, when I first get them, because I want to see what the hell you ship to your consumer. And there's going to come a time when those patch servers are down or no longer available. Is your game going to be playable in the future, in 10 years, 15 years, 20, whatever it is?
Yeah, it comes down to your space idea. They got more space and made more mistakes.
Yeah, it's what do they call that? Give a dog an inch and he'll go a mile.
Precisely.
Yeah.
That's exactly what happened. It's nothing simpler than that.
Or the best example, Tim Schafer. Take away all his restrictions, give him all the money he wants, and he will completely fuck up.
Oh man.
So what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and wrap it up for the evening, guys. Thanks for stopping by. With the rest of us who are still here, is there anything that you guys want to shill or anything that you want to talk about, or where you can be found?
For me, I'll start. You can find me at my Twitter handle, which is also my name, Gerard Fry. I'm also under the Escapist under that same name. If you want to have a talk, go on ahead. Oh, and also for anybody who does have King of Fighters 13, I'm bored. My Steam account is EK Painkiller. Get at me. I'm gonna pipe it up in the chat too.
I'm pretty much on the Escapist. You can find me on Wrathcore. That's pretty much it.
Yeah, Escapist Velventian. But we're on the same Escapist team stream group, so we'll when you contact one of us, we can reach the others.
Fantastic. Sock Puppet, you got anything for him?
I don't think so, guys.
Okay. Well, I just want to say, as usual, just thanks for having me on, and thanks for having me in your guys' space and just kind of talk about these things and these different issues. It's just incredibly flattering and humbling that people think that the things that I have to say on the subject are just of value, and that I'm just really shocked that I've been speaking what many people have been thinking for a long time and just getting a new audience. You can find me on Twitter at Oliver B. Campbell. And, I'm just going to be around. I am currently entertaining some discussions. I've been made some offers to do some writing for different outlets. So if that happens, I'll make sure people know. Or let's see, he was asking, are you asking the Twitter handle again?
Who, me?
No, that's what I thought. No, so if that happens, I'll definitely be letting people know if I'm going to be writing some more. But it is something that I'm seriously considering. I'm just kind of weighing my options to see where I go here. I don't know. Before people ask, when are you going to stream again? I don't know. It's just kind of on a day-to-day basis. Sometimes people ask me if I'll come on and help moderate a conversation or just things like that, like we did tonight. So same as usual. If I'm there, you'll know about it.
Yeah, and with that, everybody
We
have
are
a good
done.
night. Take
Or
care.
good morning.
Have a good night or a good morning.
Morning, and smoke us a kipper. We'll be back for breakfast.
Good night, you guys.
Good night, guys.
Later.
Good night.